Thank you all for being here tonight and joining me for this inaugural Get Lit with Lynn. And, you know, we're going to kind of evolve together and see what happens, but I'm going to do this every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and talk about books. And one of the reasons I chose to do it on a Tuesday is because a lot of publishers release new titles on Tuesdays. So I thought that would give me an opportunity to tell you about things that are new. I will talk about books that have just been published. I will talk about books that I've read to share my thoughts, or positive or negative, about how maybe they didn't live up to the hype. I'll talk about publishing industry news, and other things will happen as we go along. Hi, Jean.
Hi. I'm glad I could get in.
And I'll welcome feedback from you about what you'd like me to talk about. Maybe I'll invite some authors along the way as we get more established. But, you know, this is my favorite thing to do, is to talk about books. And I work, as most of you know, now I'm a store manager at Barnes & Noble. And it's pretty much, you know, I thought this a few days ago, as we're all starting to maybe feel a little more relaxed and a little more hopeful now that it's 2021. I thought, I get to spend all day in a bookstore every day. Like, how great is that? And, you know, typical busman's holiday or whatever, what do I do when I come home? I find more people to talk about books with. So I'm glad you're here. And I think that's kind of it. If you want to ask a question or make a comment, you can raise your hand and I'll acknowledge you, or you can put a comment in the chat and I will keep an eye on the chat. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to start by talking about some publishing news. Well, wait a minute. Does anybody have any questions yet? Okay, I'm going to start with publishing news. Now, let me ask you a question. When you read a book, do you notice who publishes it? Does anyone notice that? You do. Some of you do. Most readers don't. Hi, Kathy.
I used to work in publishing.
Hi, sorry about the noise.
That's okay. We can't see you though. I don't know if you want to turn your camera on. Wait, who said I used to work in publishing?
I used to work in publishing, but not this kind of publishing. I worked in medical publishing, but that's why I always notice the publisher.
Okay, so it's interesting. So people who have worked in publishing tend to notice, and most other people don't. There are, I would say, I forgot to share with you my cute little PowerPoint here, but I would say the most recognizable is that, right? The Penguin Classics. I would say of all the recognizable publishing brands, the Penguin Classic with the orange is the one that people see, that somebody might actually be drawn to that and say, oh, I know that that's a good brand. I'm comfortable with that. But in general, people don't notice it. I do, because to me and to those of you who've worked in publishing, it says something to you. Like I know something about a book automatically because I know the reputation of a particular publisher.
So do you pick out a book by the publisher then sometimes?
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's a really great question. For example, oh, hi, Kathy. The Knopf is known for literary publishing. So I might, like, if a new novel is published by Knopf, I don't ask a lot of questions. I know it's going to be good. So it's that sort of thing. So sure, if I'm choosing and one's Knopf and one's not, I'm going to pick the Knopf book.
That's interesting.
So there are lots and lots of publishers in the country, more all the time, because new technologies are enabling people to be self-publishing or self-publishers or start small presses. But in terms of traditional publishing, for the last few years, we've had something that people call the Big Six, right? So there were 6 main big American publishers. And they were, well, do you want to guess? Any names? So some of you already know.
Random.
Random House, yep.
Scribners?
Well, so Scribner is what's called an imprint. So it's
Oh,
part of a
sorry.
larger publisher. So Scribner, which is a very prestigious name, publisher of F. Scott Fitzgerald and Hemingway and all kinds of other
Okay.
legendary writers.
Mm.
So the big six were Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, Penguin Random House, Simon and Schuster, Macmillan, Hachette, and HarperCollins. So you can tell by the blended names that a lot of these are already the result of a lot of mergers. So Penguin bought Random House, and that company is itself owned by a German conglomerate called Bertelsmann. So Bertelsmann completed the purchase of Penguin Random House in 2019. And I remember when they changed the name to Penguin Random House, I thought, well, they might as well just call themselves publisher, because that's like everything all combined together. So what happened a few months ago is that Viacom CBS, who owns Simon & Schuster, announced that they were putting Simon & Schuster up for sale. And it came out in November that the purchaser is going to be Penguin Random House. So this is a huge merger coming again. Simon & Schuster is a venerable old publisher. They were founded in 1924 by Lincoln Schuster and Richard Simon. And the only reason I care about that is because Richard Simon is the father of Carly Simon.
Carly Simon.
Whom I adore. So now, you know, when the big six became the big five, now they're about to become the big four. So how will this affect authors? Some organizations are really protesting. The Authors Guild says that it will mean fewer choices for authors and less diversity. And how will it affect you as readers, and why am I telling you about it? And I think that one possible fallout could be that consolidation leads to less risk-taking, which means that publishers are going to put their money on the sure bets. So you'll get more brand name authors. You'll have the James Pattersons and the Danielle Steeles and the John Grishams, and you might get fewer new names, and you might get less diversity, more homogeneity. Ron Charles is the book reviewer for the Washington Post. I don't know if you read his reviews. I love his reviews. I think they're really spot on, and they're often very amusing. So what he had to say about this merger is, a vibrant democracy needs more editorial diversity representing a broader range of tastes and interests. Bertelsmann's omnivorous strategy is particularly alarming because Simon & Schuster plays a unique role in the United States as the leading publisher of high-risk political books, such as John Bolton's In the Room Where It Happened and Mary Trump's Too Much and Never Enough, both of which President Trump tried to squelch through lawsuits and public intimidation. And then Charles quotes the Authors Guild, which is the nation's largest professional organization of writers. And that group says, less competition makes it even more difficult for agents and authors to negotiate for better deals, or for the Authors Guild to help secure changes to standard publishing contracts. Because authors, even bestsellers, don't have a lot of options about where else to publish. The Authors Guild also notes that previous consolidations in the publishing industry have led to editorial layoffs, cancellation of contracts, a reduction in diversity among authors and ideas. So I just wanted to share that with you because I think it is significant, and it will trickle down and have impact on your book selection. And there are a lot of things like this that are happening in the industry that people aren't aware of. And you can make choices about where you buy your books and what kind of books you buy. And it all ties into it. Okay, so on to other publishing news. At the end of 2020, the copyright expired for The Great Gatsby. Now, The Great Gatsby was first published in 1925. And I don't know how much you know about the history of the book, but it didn't sell very well in Fitzgerald's lifetime. It sold fewer than 25,000 copies. Since then, it's sold nearly 30 million copies. And Maureen Corrigan, who's the reviewer for NPR, the book reviewer, she wrote a fascinating book about the Great Gatsby called So We Read On. And she talks about how the book became popular. One of the things that happened was during World War II, they created pocketbooks and sent them to the soldiers. And one of the books they sent to the soldiers was The Great Gatsby. So that helped to popularize it. So the copyright, 25 years. But in 1998, Congress extended the date of copyright expiration for works published between 1923 and 1977 to 95 years. So now it's just expiring. So what does that mean? It means that anyone will be allowed to publish the book, adapt it into a movie, make it into an opera, a Broadway musical. No one will need permission anymore to write a sequel, a prequel, a Jay Gatsby detective novel, or a Gatsby narrative populated by zombies. Also, publishers specializing in older works are already prepping their own editions. And this has already happened. Patty?
Is that what you're going to say? That there is sort of a prequel or a sequel? There's a book out, Nick?
Yeah, that's what I'm about to talk about.
Okay, and is that because that this is now in the Gatsby's now in the public domain? Oops.
Gatsby's in the public domain.
So, so if that had not been so,
can somebody mute themselves who has a phone?
Lynn, if that had not been so this person could not have written this book without paying royalties or whatever. Is that
right? Without getting permission from the estate.
Okay.
But now that we all own Jay Gatsby now, we can do whatever we want with him. We can do whatever we want with Jay Gatsby. So this picture, can you see it? This is the bookshelf at my store. And on the top shelf is Nick, which I'll talk about in a second. And underneath are all the new copies of The Great Gatsby. That's how many new editions of The Great Gatsby have just come out this week.
Who wrote Nick?
Nick was written, well, give me a second, I'll get to Nick. I wanted to tell you one other thing first, okay? Which is about the cover of The Great Gatsby. Do you recognize that? That's the original art. And it was the only book to be continuously published with the same cover art.
Oh.
Until now. And the created two copies of art that was used. One of them was owned by the Fitzgerald estate, and the other one, I happen to know, I'll name drop here because he told me so himself, is owned by Jay McInerney, the author of Bright Lights, Big City. So he owns that art. Okay, so Patty brought up this book, Nick. Okay, Nick was just published. Nick is, the author's name is Michael Farris Smith. He has a good literary reputation. I've never read anything by him. I don't know much about him. He lives in Oxford, Mississippi. Has anyone ever been there? Because Oxford, Mississippi is just one of the nicest places I've ever been. And if I ever get to be like a full-time writer, I'm moving to Oxford, Mississippi. It's beautiful. And it has a great independent bookstore, and it's the home of William Faulkner, and actually John Grisham lived there for a long time, and it's just a fabulous place. So this is a prequel. So who's read The Great Gatsby recently enough that you remember it? Marga, did you?
Yeah, not recently enough, but I remember.
It's so wonderful, but the book is told by Nick. He's the narrator. So in this book, we get Farris Smith's imagined life. We know a little bit about Nick from The Great Gatsby. We know that he fought in the war, and as did Gatsby, as did Fitzgerald. So this is Nick's story about what happened to him. And the book ends where Gatsby begins with Nick.
Have you read it? Have you read it?
Yes? No,
Yeah.
I haven't. I mean, none of the books that that I'm talking about today that have just come out, I haven't had a chance to read them yet. I read the first
Has
few
anybody
pages.
read it yet? Has anyone read it?
So I read the first few pages, and I have to say his writing style reminded me more of Hemingway than of Fitzgerald. But I just read a review of it, and I think in the New York Times, and they thought it was amazing. So I think it's on my list. Definitely, I recommend. Cover uses the art. Okay. Another book that just came out today is called The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. And this book is getting huge buzz. A plot description: at heart a love story, it centers on Samuel and Isaiah, two enslaved young men on a cotton plantation in antebellum Mississippi, and the consequences of their relationship for everyone else in their world, both black and white. Entertainment Weekly says it's a grand achievement that pits love against cruelty and spares no detail in its brutal telling of the American past. And the New York Times calls the author the heir to James Baldwin. He's also been compared to Toni Morrison. So this is a really big new book. And obviously, I mean, those of you who read books that I recommend know that I recommend books that are wrenching and difficult. And so this is definitely going to be on that list. Just let me know if you have any comments. Oh, a few other things.
Who's the author?
Oh, Robert Jones Jr. Okay, so you know what? I'm going to just interject something I was going to save till the end, but I work for Barnes & Noble. If you want to buy any of the books that I recommend tonight and you want to buy them from a Barnes & Noble, that would be great. I'm also a former independent bookseller, and I'm a huge supporter of indie bookstores. So please buy your books from a bricks and mortar bookstore, and support your local businesses. Evisa works for Uncle Bobby's in Germantown.
If I may, just quickly. So I haven't read The Prophets yet, but I've read a lot about it, and I attended an author event with Robert Jones Jr.
Oh.
And there was so much buzz at the time about it. And he just seems like, well, he seems like a very, very interesting debut author. Yeah, I'm really excited for what's going to happen with the book, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I think my connection's a little wonky. Okay, I'll go through a few more books. Thanks, Evisa. This is Outlawed by Anna North. And this is a book, this is published by Bloomsbury. You can kind of see the tiny little colophon there. Bloomsbury is an imprint of Macmillan. And Bloomsbury is one of the publishers that I like, that when I see their imprint, I know that it's going to be good literary fiction. And so I respect them. I'm sorry, I'm smiling because I just saw Rayanne's question. Can I read your question out loud? Am I contributing to the downfall of bookstores by reading on a Kindle or an iPad? Yeah, kind of. But we love you anyway. So, and Donna said, I mean, if you guys read any of these books and we talk about them next time, that would be great. I'll do my best to keep up. I'm reading Shuggie Bain now. So anyway, Outlawed is a quick summary. The crucible meets true grit in this riveting adventure story of a fugitive girl, a mysterious gang of robbers, and their dangerous mission to transform the Wild West. So one of the things that appeals to me about this is that it's a female author rewriting the mythology of the West and the Western. And I like that a lot. The last book I read that did that was Inland by Taya Obrecht. And the group I read that with in my hot off the press class didn't love that book so much. In part because the author, I think, is not American and maybe didn't feel authentic to them. But this sounds really cool. Black Buck is another big buzz book. And the story is an irresistible comic novel about the tenacity of racism in corporate America. And this is by Matteo Ascarapour, published by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. Here is a new book called The Push by Ashley Audrain. Sorry. And this is a psychological thriller. And it is, the description is, it's about the making and breaking of a family and a woman whose experience of motherhood is nothing at all what she hoped for and everything she feared. It's getting good reviews. If you like psychological thrillers, it sounds like it will hold your attention. Now this book, can you see the cover? You know that whole thing about judging a book by the cover? This, isn't it gorgeous? I love this cover. It just totally struck me today. I took it out of the box and I said, I don't know what it's about, but I love it. Anyway, it's about dictionaries. It is a debut novel that chronicles the misadventures of a lovelorn Victorian lexicographer. Isn't that just what you want to read? And the young woman put on his trail a century later to root out his misdeeds while confronting questions of her own sexuality and place in the world. So if you like words and you like this kind of word geekery, one of the, and esotericism, then this is the book for you. It's definitely the book for me. All right, a couple other things quickly. I'll race through them because we're short on time and I do want to try to keep to the half an hour. So here's more brand name. Danielle Steele has a new book out today. Danielle Steele has a new book pretty much every other week. So I don't know that her having a new book is that big a deal.
Does she have like a stable of underwriters under her, like, you know, Michelangelo had, you know, or Rodin or somebody, you know what I mean? Just like,
I know
how does
exactly.
she keep doing this? And isn't she 100 by now? Not that I have anything against old people, especially if I'm getting old.
She's definitely got a good plastic surgeon. She may have a stable. I know James Patterson does. So that might be how I never heard that she did though. Honestly, she may write them all herself. So I don't know.
I'm not criticizing. I mean,
No.
I should be Danielle Steele, right?
Look, anybody who can make a living as a writer, kudos to them, right?
But are they all the same? I mean, having never read any of her books, but the talk about the covers kind of look the same. But anyway, move on. I'm sorry.
Pretty. What will happen if you go through that gate?
You know, the thing is, her name is bigger than the title of the book.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And
Because that's people who read Danielle Steele, read they're formula books. Plug in characters saying, I read 2 or 3 and said, forget this. You know, it's like they're all the same, I find.
Right. But her fans say, I want the next Danielle Steele. I mean, any book that's on the outside is the author's picture, you know, it's about their personality. And you know, again, we're not criticizing it. It just might not be what we want to read. This is a very popular book that came out today, a new Jedi Star Wars novel. I'm sure you all are going to rush out and get this one. No, just kidding. A little bit of nonfiction, just a little bit. Sanjay Gupta. I like him. So this is his new book, Keep Sharp, Build a Better Brain at Any Age. So clearly I need to read this one.
Is he readable or is it textbook like?
No, I think it's pretty readable. It's very practical, organized, you know, lists and stuff like that. I think it's meant to be very usable. And speaking of plastic surgery or airbrushing, sorry, I know that's snarky of me, but okay. So we have new Martha Stewart book. You know, in terms of the personality driven books, in nonfiction, it's interesting. I mean, there are some people who are just all over the store, and I feel like if I never see their picture again, I would be just fine, like Joanna Gaines. But Martha, I don't know that she's still doing her thing. You know, I just don't know if she still has the pull she used to.
So is it cookbook and lifestyle stuff?
Clever tips and genius ideas for an easier, more enjoyable life.
Okay.
It's
It was more
illustrated.
interesting if she wrote about her conviction and, you know, the
Yeah, she's not,
that's woman.
that's been erased from the story. I don't
Yeah.
know, but it, you know, she does that thing that she does, which she makes everything look gorgeous.
Mhm.
And it's aspirational, like, oh, I want to cook food that looks like that. I want to live in a house that looks like that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's appealing, right?
Yeah. I want to have Oprah's chef and have everything, you know, instead of doing it myself. Yeah.
A lot of books came out today. Oh, Donna recommends Martha's Meal Kits. I'm gonna try that. I'm actually trying to become a better cook right now. I really have been doing a lot of cooking. I'm sure a lot of you have. Well, a lot of you already are really good cooks. But Rayanne, you'd be proud of me. So that was and a couple of things I'll just mention, put in a plug for my employer. This is Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble has monthly picks in different categories. And I have found in general that whoever is making these selections is really doing a good job. I'm not a mystery reader, but mysteries are obviously really popular and they pick really good mysteries. We always sell out of them. This is the new one. It's called Pretty as a Picture by Elizabeth Little. This is a book that I think is a little more women's fiction, The Authenticity Project by Claire Pooley. That's the another book. Now, the book of the month for Barnes & Noble for last month was this, Leave the World Behind by Ruman Alam. And this is literary fiction. And I read this. It was very beautifully written and very disturbing about a white family, mother, father, 2 kids, who go on a vacation to a house they rented in the Hamptons, and then kind of the world goes wrong. And this older Black couple who own the house show up, and they're like, all the lights are off in New York City. We're not going back there. We're staying with you. And it's about what happens next. It got a little more apocalyptic than I thought it was going to. But it's beautifully
It's
written.
gotten good review.
Yeah.
That's been on a lot of best of the year kind of books.
Yes. And another book that I don't have to show you that is on a lot of best of the year. Is The Cold Millions by Jess Walter. Some people read.
I loved it.
You see, and I hated it. So there you go. Right? That's
what makes vanilla and chocolate.
That's what my mother always said. And I really like Sigrid Nunez, right? Right, Patty? This is a beautiful book. And her first book, The Friend.
Must read.
Yeah. So I don't want to
Is that fiction or nonfiction?
It's fiction, but it's written in a really conversational style that you almost aren't sure if you're just listening to someone talk. What are you going through? Or what was it? The Quel est ton tourment? Quel est ton tourment? What is your torment?
Yeah.
So I won't always throw so many books at you, but it happened that quite a lot.
Then you're
waiting
frozen.
to give us new stuff.
Yeah, you're freezing off and on.
Am I back?
You're back.
Sorry about that. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Did you like that, Rayanne? I've heard really good things about it. That was also a Barnes & Noble selection. It's kind of like a time travel book. I like time travel books. Does anyone else? There's another, Margot, what do you like? Or you're
Just like time travel books.
Well, another new time travel book that's out there is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I like it. And his earlier book too, How to Stop Time. He's got like just very interesting systems worked out for how time travel works in his world. Octavia Butler's Kindred. Yeah. It has elves. Anyway, that's all I have for you for tonight. Blindness by Jose Saramago. These are great suggestions. Anybody else want to share anything else before we close for tonight?
Can I show this, Lynn? This
Oh
is-
yeah, Susan Sontag.
Yes, this is the memoir of Susan Sontag by Sigrid Nunez. And it's
Oh.
just a little book. I was surprised how small it was, but it really tells a lot about Susan. And she's somebody, of course, I had heard a lot about, but I didn't feel like I knew, hardly anything about her after I read this book. But this is really, really a good follow-up to the other books by Sigrid, certainly.
Okay. Yeah, it's nice when you come to someone through their fiction to then check out other genres. So thank you all for joining me. It's great to talk to you. Come back again next week. We'll do something, the Clarice Lispector, if you suggest. I've never read her. You recommend her?
I haven't read her either before, but this the new edition of this book, I think it's an anniversary edition. It was just such a beautiful cover that it hooked me.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a sucker.
I'm a sucker too. Give me a good cover. Again, I mean, this one wins my prize this week.
I'm gonna go get that one.
I know. Yeah. I'm going to read it. I'm going to be up all night reading, and back next week with more stuff.
Thank you.
And send me comments or requests or anything. And happy reading.
Thank
Great.
you.
That was great.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoyed
Thanks,
it.
Lynn.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice to be